Part 36, Who the Fuck Did I Marry? The Family Tree. Please fasten your seatbelts and put the tray tables in the upright position. Let's go. All right. The cousin, I'm not going to name her. The cousin had reached out to me on Facebook, asked me to please give her a call. So this conversation was on the phone. Yes, I was actually speaking to her. She informs me again about the whole he's up there. He's telling everyone that he walked in on me cheating on him. It was with a law enforcement officer, and that the law enforcement officer used his duty weapon to threaten him to get him out of the house. The reason why I'm particularly mentioning the fact that he said it was law enforcement is because he was trying to get a family member, like one of his cousins, to call the agency of the law enforcement officer and file a complaint, which in hopes would then start an internal affairs investigation. Yeah. So, female cousin's on the phone with me. She's telling me everything that he is telling them. She's like, look, we know he a liar. We don't fuck with him. He's been a liar since a kid, but he's also family. She said, we didn't know at all who you are. So I thought that that was interesting because I was like, you didn't know who I was, but his brother knew who I was. And so, again, that's when I said to her that I was like, I've talked, he's talked to his brother every day. So why wouldn't the brother tell y'all that he had gotten married? And so she said, what brother? And so I told her the brother's name. And she said, he told you that? I said, he was having the phone calls in front of me. So at this point, what the cousin said was, she was like, okay, I'm going to confirm that with him. She was like, he lives up the street, so I'm going to just confirm that with him. She was like, because I'm pretty sure that they have been beefing for a while. I was like, I can only tell you what I saw, what I heard. That's all I can say. So then when she asked me about, well, how many brothers do you think he has? And I said he has 4 brothers. Again, I listed all of them. This woman was like, he has 2 brothers. She said he has the twin, and he has the older brother, the one that he was on the phone with every morning, blah 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 blah. I said, twin? Who's the twin? So this is where she explained to me. She said the parents, mom and dad, had the older brother. The older brother is about 5 or 6 years older than Legion. Legion and the younger brother, who lives in Nashville, they are twins. So when he kept saying the younger brother, my younger brother by 2 years, it's his older brother by 20 minutes. They are twins. I have seen a picture of this brother. Yes, they do very much look alike, but I didn't know they were twins. It doesn't even matter. I didn't know they were twins. But definitely they had the same mom and dad. So she was like, no, that he's older. He's older than Legion by 20 minutes. They're twins. She said, so the parents had 3 boys. Brother in Philly, the older brother, and the twins. She was like, who the hell are these sisters that you're talking about? So I tell her, I was like, Shantae and Kim. She said, I don't know who Shantae is. She said, Kim is my daughter. Kim is not his sister. Kim is my daughter. And she said, that's his cousin. She was like, and they haven't spoken in about 20 years. So, no, that's not his sister. He does not have any sisters. And I said, well, then what about the other 2 brothers? She was like, what other 2 brothers? I said, the brothers from his dad. She was like, you mean to tell me this man is going around telling people, I know somebody's going to quote Nicki Minaj, lying on your dead mama, but try not to. She says, you mean to tell me this man is walking around lying on his dad, saying that his dad had kids outside of his mom? And I kind of stuttered like, yeah. She was like, he does not. She said, I have no idea who those 2 men are. She said, those are not his brothers. But if y'all remember, I've met those 2. And he introduced them as Man, this is my brother John. This is my brother Matt. Type thing. And so they both were like, "Oh, my sister, it's good to meet you. It's good to meet you." Remember that, because obviously I do eventually talk to those two men again. So she says to me, the family tree is mom and dad, the three sons. She was like, there are no sisters. She said, I don't have a clue who Shantae is. She said, Kim is my daughter, so that's just their cousin. But again, they ain't spoken 20 years. I said, okay. And then there was the grandmother. She said, yeah. She named the grandmother. She was like, yeah, she died in like 2008. I said, yeah, he told me that she died in 2020. And that, all of you were coming down for the memorial service. And she's just like, she died in 2008. I said, then there was the uncle who also died from COVID. She was like, which uncle is that? I told her the name. She said, he's been dead since like, 2010. I said, okay, what about the cousin nicknamed Junebug? Everybody got a cut. If you're not African American, we all know a Junebug somewhere. And she just was like, oh yeah, cousin Junebug. She was like, man, that's crazy what happened to him. And I was like, what do you mean what happened to him? Because I know he has talked to his cousin Junebug on the phone like a few months prior. He was like, and so she said to me, she said, yeah, he had passed away in like 2016. So this is now three people that she's naming that I recall him having either a story about or a phone call with, and she's telling me that they are all passed away. So this is when the conversation kind of changes, and she's like, you know what? She said, let me speak to the older brother. Because he probably wants to talk to you. She was like, you probably should talk to him, and a lot of your questions will get answered. She was like, this dude's been lying ever since he was a kid. She was like, she said, literally, we don't fuck with him. I remember her saying that verbatim. She was so adamant. She was like, and when he showed up here out the blue, talking about how his wife cheated on him with a law enforcement officer, and how the guy took his gun out and threatened him to leave the house. She was like, we knew something was up. She was like, that's why I had to find out who you were and reach out to you and find out the truth. I said, there was no other guy. There was no law enforcement officer. And she was like, yeah, because he was telling us where the dude worked and how we should go ahead and help him file a complaint so that this dude could lose his job. I said, there is no other person. I said, I kicked him out. That was me, all by myself. No gun, just my fist. And so she said, he telling us that he had gotten married, and then she was like, apparently y'all had a baby. So she was like, so you got a kid with him? So I had to explain to her. I said, no. I said I had a miscarriage back in back in June of 2020, and I had to have surgery in July. So she was just like, girl. So she started like really being encouraging and was saying, you dodged a bullet, honey. She was like, I don't wish this. She's like, I know he my family, but I don't wish him on no woman. So we've had each other's numbers. She was like, if you need anything, please feel free to call me. She was like, I've had my own issues with him. I've had my own issues in life. But she was like, get your divorce and be done with him. Then she said, I'm going to put you in contact with the older brother. Next part is me finally talking to the older brother that he had been talking to every morning. Part 37, who the fuck did I marry? So at this point in time, I have filed for divorce. I paid for the filing fee. I'm representing myself pro se, and it should be an uncontested divorce. During this time, Legion had driven to Philly, lied to his family, and said I had cheated on him, that he caught me, and that the guy I cheated on him with was a law enforcement officer who used his gun to threaten him to get out the house. None of that was true. At some point while he was in Philly, he ran out of options in terms of where he could stay. Family members did not want him to stay with them. Apparently, a lot of bridges were burned, according to the female cousin I had talked to on the phone. So he left Philly and went to Augusta. Yes, what you were hearing is correct. He drove from Georgia to Philly, stayed in Philly for about 3, 4 days, left Philly, drove back to Georgia, went to Augusta. Keep in mind, if you have lost your notes at this point, he was raised in Philly and did high school in Augusta before he went to California. So he has family in Augusta. So at this point, he's on his way to Augusta to stay with a new set of people. The reason why this is important is because what I have is a divorce settlement agreement. That divorce settlement agreement has to be signed by the two of us, where we are basically telling the court, look, this is what he's keeping, this is what I'm keeping. I need his signature. Let me repeat that. I need his signature because I wanted a very quick and painless divorce, as much as it could be. So by this time, this is now around June 25th. So around June 25th, he's now in Augusta. He had left the house June 17th. So between June 17th and June 24th is the trip to Philly, then leaving Philly, coming to Augusta. My aunt and my little cousin get in the car with me and I drive to Augusta with a rag on my head, some sweatpants, and a tank top because it's July, so it's hot. But we ride to Augusta. I had spoken to him. I had said, I just need you to sign this piece of paper, and he was like, I'll get to it when I get to it. No, no, no. We're going to get to it as quickly as possible. So if that means I got to drive to Augusta tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock, I'm going to do that because I need that signature. I ain't tell him this. This was my attitude. Sure enough, went ahead, drove down there. I met him at the UPS store in Augusta. It's in the same Kroger shopping center. They had a notary there because I needed the papers to be notarized. So he pulls up. It's only been a week since I last saw him. It has been months since my aunt saw him. Okay? She had no idea of the condition that he was in. Again, I'm telling y'all, when I met him, when he met my family, he was like a size 3X. In just a short span of time for a week, he easily could have been in an extra large, maybe even a large, but was wearing 3X clothes. So he has told me this whole time, he didn't know I had spoken to his family. Okay, probably need to put that in there. He did not know I had spoken to his cousin. So he was telling me that he had a place to stay. He was staying with some family members, and everything was cool. He told me he was going back to Augusta because he had a job. That's what he told me. The family member, the cousin, told me, oh no, it's not that he had a job. We kicked his ass out because he's still lying. And we don't want anything to do with him. So when I saw him get out the car, I immediately knew, you probably have not washed in 3 days. I'm not overreacting. His nails had not been cut, so his nails were a bit long. He smelled like the Chattahoochee dump on a hot summer Georgia day. He stunk so bad. And for a moment, I did not recognize the man that I was legally married to. I did not recognize him. He almost looked, what's the word? Emaciated. If I may be mispronouncing it, but the way someone looks when they've lost so much weight and it's almost like your skin and bones. He looked homeless. He smelled homeless. And my heart just kind of broke. It kind of did. I'll be honest, it kind of broke. It did not break enough for me to not get that signature, though. So when he walked into the UPS store, you clearly could see that some of the people were like, let me get away from him. Me, I just was like, okay, so I just need you to sign right here, and I just need you to sign right there. Okay, and then a woman named Lauren came over and notarized the papers, and then we were done because he signed the divorce agreement. He didn't even read it. He didn't even read it. Reason why I'm pointing that out is because he didn't read the part where what's left in the house now belongs to me. Where he took technically what he was going to take. Everything else in that home belongs to me. Remember, I told y'all he had left all his Invicta watches. He had left all his WWE championship belts, his Jordans, a lot of his clothes, his Cole Haans. He had left all that stuff. He never even read the divorce agreement. So he signed it. I signed it. Lauren notarized it. We leave the store, and I said, have you eaten? And he was like, yeah, I ate. It's just, my knee. So again, he's talking about the knee, but if you saw him, you would know there's way more to it than the knee. So I said to him, look, since you met me here, let me give you some money so you can get you some chicken nuggets. Yeah, that's what I said. You can get you some chicken nuggets. So I believe I gave him like $5 or $6. Go get you some chicken. I think I Zelled it to him, actually. Just go get you some food. Then because where he parked was not far. It was like, okay, I'm parked here. He's parked in front of me in the other row. So there's that aisle that you can drive down. So I walked him to the car. And I saw the condition of the inside of the car. And that's when I knew he's been living in his car. He's been living in his car. So clearly, I no longer had a question of, so where's this offshore account? Where's the U.S. bank savings account? Where's the checking account? Didn't have that question anymore. Because if you had money, you wouldn't be living in your car. You would not be in the same clothes that you were in when you left my house on June 17th. And this is now June 25th. So he was like, I'm going to be all right. I'm about to start a new job. I'm going to be cool. I got a family member I can stay with. Everything's going to be okay. All right. I said, I will let you know when the divorce is granted. I said, I will send you a copy of the divorce decree. And he was like, okay. He said, well, how long you think that's going to take? I said, I'm not sure. I thought I had to wait 30 days before I could file the divorce agreement settlement form. And then the judge would grant it in 30 days. So basically, this is like June 25th. I'm looking at the end of August that it would take for the divorce to be granted, assuming there were no hiccups, assuming he didn't decide he was going to pull a fast one. So I told him, I was like, I'm going to file this, and then once we get the divorce decree, I'll send you a copy. He said, okay. He got in his car. I got in my car. I drove all the way back home, and he went to wherever he went. Next part is the next series of lies that I was faced with. All right, part 38 of Who the Fuck Did I Marry? I'm going to call this housekeeping and missing pieces. So, housekeeping. First and foremost, as much as I know you all have enjoyed this series, and some of you have told me how entertaining you have found it, the story will be done this weekend. So, in other words, I don't care how many parts I gotta film. It will be done this weekend. We're not going to drag it into the new week. So I just want to let everyone know that. So please be sure to tell your sisters, your mamas, your aunties, your cousins, your best friends, hey y'all, go ahead and watch all the parts, because she's saying she's wrapping it up this weekend. But I'll leave the playlist up, so don't worry. Also, let's see. I'm sorry for the people who were like, I keep talking really slow. I didn't know that I was, and they're like, you're just long-winded. I'm very detailed. So that's probably what you're feeling, is that I'm detailed and I'm trying to get everything out, again, in a responsible manner. So, you all have asked me if I will do a live. Yes, I will. I don't have any issue doing a live. I feel like if you're going to put the story out there, you know you're going to get questions. So if you stand on business and you stand on what you said, do the live. So yes, I will do a live, and I will let you all know when I'm gonna do a live. So it won't just be some random shit. I will actually do a live and let everyone know. So that way, if you have questions, bring them. The issue with doing a live is that I need moderators. So because I just anticipate a lot of people have questions and I'm just one person, and I don't want to be accused of she's ignoring my question, which means there's holes in her story. Y'all, we all know how TikTok is. So, but I will absolutely do a live. That's the housekeeping. Missing pieces. So when I said before that it's important to me that I'm responsible in how I tell this story, meaning I'm clear and I go in detail, I realized that I left out some missing parts. And it was brought to my attention by a number of you. Thank you, because I'm all for accountability. I did not go into how my ex-husband, Legion, left the condiment company and then went to Apple. I also did not go into detail on when my mom came to visit. Both of those were in the month of April. I was going to go into detail a little bit more on the Apple situation because, as you probably have figured out, of course something came out later on. But nevertheless, in terms of April of 2021, my mom came for a visit. She lived in Arkansas. She came to visit us. She came to visit us after we had that whole sexting on Facebook incident and just after we had started marital counseling. There were no fireworks during her visit. Nothing was weird. I did talk about how, my family has always been there. And if you spoke with my mom, she would tell you she didn't see anything out of the ordinary. But there was something in her spirit that just didn't sit right. She didn't talk to me about it at the time. She did not raise her concerns. She simply, when she came to visit, we welcomed her with open arms. Legion was excited to meet her. She was excited to meet him. We took my mom out to eat. It was a typical, very quiet, non-active visit. I didn't know what my mother thought until later on. So she didn't share with me during the visit, something don't seem right. She and I sat in the guest room talking. I never told her anything that was going on. Number one, because again, it goes back to that mindset of what happens in my marriage needs to stay in my marriage. And I talk about how I didn't think looking back, it was not a good idea that I told my aunt what had happened. My aunt is not the type that's going to tell my mother. That in other words, if you confide in her, she keeps it between you and her. So my mom never knew that there were any issues. And so there was nothing for her to be on mama bear mode. Had she known, this would have been a very different trip, but she didn't know. So she did come to visit. Everything went fine. He and I put on a united front. Oh, we're so happy. We're so, in love. And yes, behind the scenes was a whole different story. He talked to her about how he was looking to buy a house and how he told her how work was going, how his job, how his job was going, bragging as usual, which I did tell my mom, look, he's going to talk about himself and money a lot. So, just change the subject. If he brings up a house, change the subject. That was my instructions to her, because I was like, I don't even want to get into the whole house situation. So other than that, uneventful. Now, once my mom left, this is still in April, everything was fine with him at the condiment company. As far as I knew, everything was fine. What ended up happening is he randomly came home one day and starts complaining about changes that are going on at the company. When he started complaining about those changes, it was things like, keep in mind, he is not VP of the company. He was VP of, I keep getting it wrong, but I think it was VP of production is what the memo says. So he was not the second in command for the company. He was upset that he was being blamed for production stats, that the production was down. He was upset that his plant manager apparently had resigned. He was upset that some of the policy changes that were coming into play that would affect his plant. These are the things that he was coming home and complaining about. Literally, he would complain. He started complaining Monday. By Friday, he said, you know what, if they continue doing this, then I just need to find another job. He was like, I think I'm gonna call my homeboy that I work with at Apple and I'm gonna see, what they have available. Yes, there were red flags going up. Of course there were. At this point, we're not even dealing with United Nations of red flags. We are dealing with the Olympics. We are dealing with the parade of all nations. Everybody got a red flag. So when he said that, I was kind of like, okay, because I had become numb to all the antics that he did. I was numb to it. So he literally said, I think I'm gonna call my homeboy and I'm gonna see what's at Apple. My response to him was, well, what about your salary? Would you take a pay cut? And he was like, no, I'm not gonna take a pay cut. Like, I wouldn't leave unless it's gonna be the same amount or more money. Y'all, the next week, last week of April, I'm at work, minding my own business. He calls me and tells me, I've decided to resign. You what? I've decided to resign. Don't worry. Don't get all crazy. I had talked to my homeboy. There is a position at Apple and I'm on my way there now to go and meet him so that I can get some information on the position. We're married, y'all. We're married. So what I said to him was, well, will you get all this in writing? His words to me were, of course I'm gonna get it in writing. I'm not stupid. You know what? I don't even want to talk to you no more. Click. That's the end of April. So that is how I was introduced to this Apple job. Again, if you stick with this series, you will find out exactly what happened. But that's how I was introduced to the Apple job. It literally was in a span of within 2 weeks. And he resigned from the condiment company and immediately said, I'm going to move over to Apple. Just wanted to clarify that. So, we will continue on. Part 39, who the fuck did I marry? Everything you're going to hear probably in this part and the next part, all of this happens in the month of July 2021. Divorce has been filed. It was filed the end of June. I got his signature on the divorce settlement agreement. I thought that I had to wait 30 days before I could actually file that with the court. And so this is kind of in the limbo period because I'm still within those 30 days. So he left a book bag at the house, book bag that had all kind of paperwork in there. Inside the book bag, this is the paperwork that I found. Number one, I found a packet from the condiment company where it showed his 401k contributions. It also stated in there that he had been terminated. So he was terminated from the condiment company according to the paperwork in the packet that I saw in the book bag that he left at my house. Also in the book bag were paycheck stubs from a previous job where he worked at a cemetery. The same cemetery that he took me to show me where his grandmother and grandfather were buried. So let's go ahead. I'll do this video and say, this is what he told me, this is what I confirmed. He told me his grandmother and grandfather were buried there. He showed me a headstone with a family name on it. If you go back in previous parts, I talk about it. The truth is, they are not buried there. He is of no relation to the people who are buried at that particular gravesite. Only reason why he knew about it is because he had worked there. Also in the book bag, it was a copy of a driver's license that he had. The address on the driver's license, now this I still don't have an answer to, but the address on the driver's license was the same address as the cemetery, because I looked it up on Google. Also in the book bag was paperwork from another construction company job, meaning it was paycheck stubs from another construction company here in Atlanta that he had worked for. It did not have dates on it, so I don't know when he worked for the construction company. Also in the book bag paperwork was unemployment paperwork. So it looked like he had been receiving unemployment just before I met him. I met him in March. It looked like he had been receiving unemployment January and February. So once again, let's confirm. He did not work for the condiment company for 6 to 7 years. Also in there were scraps of paper from a temp agency where it was information on the job that he had been placed at. Where was that job? The condiment company. He would be a forklift / loader is what it said. So I interpret that to mean he can drive a forklift, but he would have been loading up the 18-wheelers for them to go out to their deliveries. Also in this book bag was paperwork from Clayton County courts, I believe, for a weekend, what is it called? A weekender jail. It was like a weekender jail receipt. So I had to do some research. So apparently what that means is that there is an option where if you have a job, let's say you were sentenced to 60 days in jail, but you have a full-time job. Apparently the court can say, okay, you'll go to jail on the weekends. So in other words, you have to report to the jail on Friday at 5 o'clock and you'll be there Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You will get out Sunday at 6 o'clock. Apparently that's actually a real thing. So what was in the book bag were multiple yellow receipts for different weekends that he had to report and get out of jail. Last but not least, there were some additional pictures, and then there were some, and when I say pictures, I'm talking about family photos. And then there was another additional copy of his driver's license with the Douglasville address. I looked up that address. The name associated with that address was the same name as the ex-girlfriend that he had in between the ex-wife and me. If you go back to the video where I talk about the conversation I had with the ex-wife, she tells me that the address was going to come back to the ex-girlfriend. I'm simply saying that is correct. So what she told me is true. So because of everything that I found, I decided to go down a new rabbit hole. Again, just recapping what I said in previous videos. Ex-husband was always a stickler about law enforcement. His dad was a retired police officer. I'm just telling y'all the story. His dad was a retired police officer. Mom was a retired teacher. After his dad retired, they moved to Augusta, started a church. He took me to that church in Augusta. The same day that he took me to meet his aunt who lived in Augusta. So these are now things that he actually took me to, just like he took me to the cemetery. So that's what I found in the book bag. The weekender jail receipts. I went ahead and went online to find out exactly why did he have to go to jail for the weekend. And I'm going to end this part here. The next part has to do with his criminal history. Part 40, who the fuck did I marry? So we are now at the point of July 2021. We are at the point where I've spoken to the female cousin, and she gave me the phone number for the older brother. For the purposes of this video, we're going to call him Chris. Chris was very nice. I called him. He was gracious. He was willing to answer whatever questions I had. And what he said to me was, he said, my brother has always been a liar. He's always been a liar. He said, but ask me what questions you have and I'll confirm what's real and what's not. First question I had was, when was the last time you spoke to him? Without missing a beat, Chris says, 2015, just after our mother's funeral. I explained to him about the phone calls, the fact that Legion would be on the phone for 35 minutes, laughing, talking to Chris, relaying messages from Chris to me, and relaying messages from me to Chris. Without missing a beat, Chris says he was never talking to me. And he said, now I am going to say this. Maybe he was on the phone, but he was not on the phone with me. He said, because he knows that if I ever see him, I'm going to whoop his ass. And I'm laughing because obviously Legion loves to say I'm going to whoop somebody's ass. So for the people who are confused, like, wait, what does this mean about the phone calls? What this means is every single time that my ex-husband was on the phone, holding his phone like this, talking, laughing, cracking jokes. Hey, my wife said that, we can go later on this evening and all this other stuff. Every time they were doing things like that, every time he was having a phone call or conversation that he claims to be with Chris, no one is on the phone. No one's on the phone. That is what that means. So I'm on the phone with Chris. My mind is spinning. It is blowing up like a volcano. I mean, I'm going crazy. I'm going crazy because what this means is that for the past 4 or 5 months, every morning that he is having a phone call with his brother Chris, I am now understanding in real time that phone call was completely fake. So Chris tells me maybe he was talking to somebody else, but it wasn't me. He said the only family member that Legion actually talks to is the twin. And that's only because for some reason, I guess it's their twins, he helps him out when he needs it. Legion only calls the twin when he needs money. And the twin, according to Chris, now this is the part that might blow some minds. The twin brother, the one that is older by 20 minutes, is VP of his company, is married, drives a luxury car, and lives in like a 4 or 5 bedroom house in Nashville. So Chris is saying to me, he was like, it sounds like he took the identity of the twin and was trying to act like that's his life. And it's not. He was like, that nigga ain't never had no money, ain't never kept a job a long period of time. And he was like, and you're telling me that he claims he was VP of a company? And so he was like, did you ever see anything? Did you ever meet people like Chris? I respect the fact that he was asking me the same questions y'all are asking me. Did you ever meet any family members? And I told him, I said, I met your aunt. Well, what aunt is that? I told him her name. He said, that ain't our damn aunt. I don't know if y'all have ever dealt with people from Philly. So he was just loud. He was like, that ain't our aunt. He said, that is our mother's best friend. And I don't trust that hoe. I'm sorry. It's the way he said it that it makes me laugh. Anyway, he's like, I don't trust her. I don't trust her at all. She is not our aunt. She was our mother's best friend when our mother was living in Augusta. She's not our aunt. So then I explained to him about the other brothers. The brothers, remember, there were 2 half brothers from his dad. One lived in Baltimore, one lived in Augusta. Chris is on the phone saying, I don't know who them niggas are. They ain't related to us. He said, our dad never had other kids. He was like, so you mean to tell me this nigga going around telling people that our dad had kids on our mom? And I said to him, well, the way he actually put it is that the two brothers came before y'all. He was like, hell no. No. So then I explained to him about the sisters. He was like, who the hell is Shantae? And I was like, Shantae, again, I'm just telling you what I was told. Shantae is a sister that lives in Douglasville, married with 2 kids. He was like, no, we don't have a sister. Told him about Kim. He was like, Kim's not our sister, she's a cousin. And he said to me, and I know she ain't talked to him in forever in 2 days. He said, so everyone, the only people who are his family members is Chris and the twin. He's like, we got some cousins up here. I told him about Junebug. I told him about the uncle. I told him about the grandmother. And he's just sitting back like, oh my God. He said, he was like, I realized that every relationship my brother gets in, he gets worse. And it sounds like he is actually worse than what he was in the last relationship. And I thought he was talking about the ex-wife that I had spoken to. No, he had no idea there was another wife. Because again, he hasn't spoken to him since 2015. So he was like, the best thing I can say to you is this. He said, thank God you ain't have kids with him. He said, get your divorce and forget you ever met this man. And he was like, and I know how that sounds because he's my brother. He said, but if I didn't have to claim him, I wouldn't. And I said to him something that I should have probably said in this whole TikTok series. This is not someone that you forget. This is not a situation that, man, I don't even remember him. No. What I don't remember is the version of myself before I met him, because nothing so far has turned out to be true. The only thing that Chris was able to tell me is true is that, number one, yes, there is a brother in Philly, him. Yes, there is a brother in Nashville, the twin. Yes, both parents are deceased. That is what I was told from the beginning. Those pieces of information are true. The grandmother did die in 2008. He was like, no, she didn't. She definitely didn't die in 2020. I told him how I found the obituary. And so he was like, and the uncle, he said, which uncle is he talking about? Because if you guys remember, back in one of the parts, I talk about where he said his uncle was giving him advice on why he should not open up his savings account to let me see it. He would not let me see it. And so I'm telling Chris about the uncle, and he was like, that uncle been dead for years. I told him about Junebug. He said, Junebug been dead for years. And I said, Chris, he was having conversations with Junebug on the phone in front of me. He was like, it wasn't Junebug. He said, it sounds like my brother was making up the conversations. He said, he definitely was making up the conversations with me. He said, hell no, I ain't gonna be on the phone at no 6 o'clock in the morning. So the conversation with Chris solidified that this is the actual family tree. And no, there were never any conversations with his brother every morning when I was getting ready to go to work. They had never talked. On to the next part. Part 41, who the fuck did I marry? So this is a continuation of my conversation with Chris, which will then lead into some other stuff. So Chris has confirmed that he has not spoken to Legion since 2015. So now we know that the phone calls that Legion was having every morning on the phone with Chris when we were, getting ready to go to work, the phone calls were fake. I demonstrated in the last video how I think how he was doing those phone calls. Because he would relay messages from me to whoever was on the phone. So Chris and I also then talked about their parents. So if you remember in the beginning, I told you from the get-go This man was, very respectful of law enforcement because his dad was a retired Philadelphia police officer. The mom was a retired teacher. And so he had the utmost respect for law enforcement. That's what he used to always say. Because, again, there's a lot that he lied about. So I'm trying to only highlight the big things because, truthfully, it got to a point where when he would say that as a VP in his company, he had a meeting with the local sheriff. Child, we know that's a lie. So I don't even need to go into detail about that because, again, why? So I told Chris what Legion said about their dad being a retired police officer. And I was explaining how he said the mom was a retired teacher. So Chris listened. Again, very gracious, very nice guy. He listened and he was like, so are you ready for me to tell you what's true and what's not? And at this point, I was already convinced I was going to be drinking heavily that night after this phone call. So I was like, go ahead. All right. So here's what Legion said. Legion said, my dad was a retired police officer with Philadelphia PD. When he retired, he and my mom moved to Augusta. I was there for high school, and they started a church. He took me to that church in Augusta and showed me where the church that they started. The truth. Dad, according to Chris, their dad was nowhere near the church. That man ain't go to church on Easter. He ain't go to church on Christmas. He was like, my dad he ain't stepped foot in the church since the day he got married. That was the last time he went to church. He ain't have nothing to do with church. He said that their father was the furthest thing from a pastor. And he was like, I love my dad, but that man drank, smoked, and he was not a pastor. The mom was not a retired teacher. She did substitute teach at one point, but she was not a retired teacher. The dad was a truck driver. And not only was the dad a truck driver, at one point, he was a correctional officer. And so I said to Chris, I was like, I said I had no idea, of course. I had no idea. So now we know the truth. The dad was never in law enforcement. And I'm not knocking correction officers. I want to make very clear, because I know that sometimes people that work in law enforcement feel like, look, when I'm out there patrolling, that is not the same as being a correction officer. And correction officers may feel the same. So I just want to give the distinction between the two. So the dad at one point was a correction officer. However, his primary career was a truck driver. And so the dad would do long hauls. So Chris is explaining, no, he was like, now that's funny. He said, if you knew our dad, you would understand how funny that is to even insinuate that he was a pastor. And so I told him about the church that we went to. He was like, oh, okay. So he took you to a church in Augusta and told you that was our parents' church. He was like, now, our mom used to go to church, every now and then. But he said, our dad ain't been to church since the day he married mom. So the church that Legion took me to and said that his parents started that church, that was not true. So he just took me on a field trip for nothing, basically. So I told him about the weekend, because I did tell Chris where I worked. And that is when Chris said to me, because at the time I worked in a law enforcement agency, and he said to me, now how does that work? He said, because Legion, he done been in trouble a few times. And I was like, what do you mean? Because I had not yet gone online into the court system to see what type of trouble he's been in. And so he explained to me, he was like, just run his criminal history and you'll see it for yourself. He said, because I don't know all the charges, but run his criminal history. I said, okay. He gave me some homework. I'll run his criminal history. So again, he cleared up a lot of stuff in regards to the family dynamics. He did explain to me that yes, he does have a daughter. He and his ex-wife are divorced. And I said, well, Legion would talk about the niece, meaning Chris's daughter, and would send her stuff for her birthday. And he was like, he said, I'm almost positive my brother never sent anything for my daughter's birthday. And I explained to him, I said, isn't your daughter's name Egypt? He said, no. Who the hell is Egypt? And I said, I was told that was your daughter's name. That's the reason why I'm saying the name on here, because obviously we're about to confirm that's not the daughter. So I said, I was told that's your daughter's name. I said, I went with him to Rack Room Shoes and bought shoes for what I was told was your daughter. And she lived in St. Louis with your ex-wife. He said, no. He said, my daughter and my ex-wife do not live in St. Louis. He said, I don't know who Egypt is. He was like, are you sure it wasn't for a woman? And I said, well, it was kids' shoes. And he was like, no. He said, and I told him, I said, I went to the UPS store, I mailed it, and it, you know, they printed the label with the girl's name on it, and I'm thinking this whole time it's Legion's niece. Chris is like, I don't know who that is. That's not even the name of one of our cousins. So I have no idea, ladies and gentlemen, who my ex-husband was buying girl shoes for and had me sending them, telling me it's for his niece. I have no idea. So Chris is like, yeah, he finally said to me the same thing the ex-wife said, which is pretty much whatever he told you is a lie. And I'm being honest with you guys. It is very hard to comprehend that everything is a lie. Like, there has to be something that's true. I'm like, how was he paying? If he wasn't working at the condiment company, or he got fired from the condiment company, how was he still paying the bills? Keep in mind, we never joined our accounts. He wanted to, but we never did, because he wouldn't show me the offshore, the savings account, which of course never existed. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, I know that I saw his checking account. I know that I saw his savings account, and he had money in there. Something had to be true. Something had to be true. And Chris was like, no. He said, it sounds like everything my brother said, everything that he told you was made up. He said, those phone calls were definitely made up. He said, I don't know who Egypt is. That's not any family member of ours. I don't know who Shantae is. We don't have a sister. He said, we don't have half brothers. He was like, I'm telling you who the family members are. He said, I am so sorry that my brother put you through this. So now let's go into the next part. Part 42. Who the fuck did I marry? So I finished going through the book bag. Still July of 2021. I finished going through the book bag. There were some other folders with papers in there. He had left the work phone. What I actually found out was that it was not a work phone. It was simply a secondary personal phone. He told me it was a work phone. I thought that the company was paying for the work phone. That's what I thought. No, because I found receipts where basically, and I didn't know this, ladies and gentlemen, I had no idea, but I found receipts where it was a prepaid phone and he's paying to add minutes to it. So it's just receipts of, you know, you added minutes to the phone on this date, you added minutes on that date. So the work phone whole thing, that was a bold-faced lie. Obviously it was a lie, because as we now know, he was a forklift loader. So the work phone that he's been walking around with was really just a secondary phone. he had left the phone. He took his personal phone, meaning the main phone, I should say, but the work phone he left. So I'm going through the work phone, just trying to find some sort of answer. Now what is really burning in my mind is how is it that he had all this money in the accounts, but again, the last time I saw him, he's living in his car. Like, the math is not mathing. I go into not just the photos of the work phone, I go into the deleted folder. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to go through somebody's phone, which I will never do again, but if you're going to go through the phone, don't just go through the text messages and the pictures. Go into the deleted folder, because sometimes you find a gold mine. In this case, I went into the deleted folder of the pictures in the work phone. I keep saying work phones because, again, this is just a secondary phone. It is deactivated. There's no minutes on it. So I go into the deleted pictures, and what I see is what looks like a screenshot of his checking account, the one that I saw with the available balance. Then there's another photo of the screenshot of the savings that he showed me. Now, one of two things it could be. Either one, it's not real and it was pulled offline, or two, he took a screenshot of his own account and saved the photos. So this is when I got introduced to reverse Google image search. I did a reverse Google image search. Sure enough, as you probably have figured out, some of you, because I read it in the comments, what he showed me when he turned his phone around, showing me his available checking account balance, was nothing more than a screenshot that he had found on Google. When he showed me his savings, turned the phone around, because remember, I demonstrated for y'all how he was, and then, turned it around and showed it to me as if he was signing in. When he did that, he was simply showing me a screenshot that he had taken from Google Images. Because when I did a reverse Google image search with those two photos, the checking and the savings, it came right up. It was nothing more than just Google Images. In my phone, I didn't even need this because, again, I already knew that he was not a VP regional manager, but still, for shits and giggles, I did a reverse image search of the charcoal BMW. Remember, I told y'all he had sent me pictures of the company car. Nothing more than a screenshot he had taken off of Google Images. The house that he showed me that he had in San Diego, Google Images. So, what we can now confirm is anything he showed me when he's turning his phone around is nothing more than an image from Google Images at this point. The checking account, the savings account, Google Images. The house, Google Images. The company car, that charcoal gray BMW 5 Series, Google Images. So at this point, I realized, okay, nothing is real. And I wasn't so much in a rage, to be honest with you. I wasn't in a rage then and there, as much as it was, I really truly had a moment where I said to myself, oh my God, what the fuck have I let in my life? Like, this is not even human at this point. That's really how I felt. Like, again, as someone who, I studied psychology, but I didn't graduate with a psychology degree. However, I have never dealt with a pathological liar. I have studied about them, but I have never come into contact with a pathological liar. Because to a compulsive liar, if you ask them, man, why did you lie to me? They probably are going to have a reason. Pathological liars don't have a reason. Like, there's no limit to the lie. So I have now confirmed that at least 70% of everything that I thought I knew is now absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. So in between all of this, I get a phone call from the aunt in Augusta. The aunt in Augusta, who Chris has confirmed is the mother's best friend. She is not their mother's sister or dad's sister. She's the best friend of the deceased mom. She calls me, and this is the one I have met. This is the one that Chris was like, I don't trust that hoe, anyway. So she called because she wanted to know what happened. She wasn't trying to be nosy or messy or anything like that. She's just trying to find out what happened because apparently Legion is trying to come stay with her. So she asked me, sweet lady, but she said, what happened with you guys? I told her we're getting a divorce. I said because he lied to me a lot. He lied to me a lot. And so what breaks my heart about the conversation with her is that she said, so whatever happened to the baby? Mind you, we went to Augusta, told her I was pregnant. I thought he told her that I had a miscarriage. He didn't. He never told this woman I had a miscarriage. So she informs me, this is what she tells me. So now we're confirming something else. She tells me that on at least 5 times while I'm at work, Legion was driving to Augusta and telling her that he was going to visit the church of where the parents allegedly the church that the parents started. And I was like, what do you mean he went to Augusta? She said, I've seen him like 4 or 5 times. He's come down here, and each time I've asked him to bring the baby. And I said, what baby? And she said, the baby that y'all had. He told me that y'all had a baby boy. And I said, no, ma'am. I said I had a miscarriage in June of 2020. And she said, oh my God. Oh, she was doing that whole thing. She said this whole time he told me that y'all had a son in January. And I have been asking him for pictures. I have been asking him to bring both of you down here so I could meet him. And he always had an excuse as to why he wouldn't bring the baby. And the last time he was in Augusta, he said that he was leaving you and he was taking the baby with him and that you were at work. I am not making this up. That is what that woman told me. And I just was like, no, ma'am. None of that is true. There is no baby. I said I had no idea he was going to Augusta. Next part.